you know that running
back. You are listening to the Exitology Unlock Your Profits, Unlock Your Potential show on the #1 global business talk and news network on the internet, IBGR, International Business Growth Radio, the world of business at your fingertips. I am Jason Waldron, your host for the Exitology Unlock Your Profits, Unlock Your Potential show, and I am honored to be joined here today by Kelly Oliver, as you heard from her a few minutes ago, Kelly, she's the author of Maximizing Your Exit Strategy. And what we were talking about before we started talking, we're going to get into some things about being prepared to exit and what that looks like. But what we were really talking about a few minutes ago is where are we now in the trends and what do we see going on? And not to put too fine a point on it, we as business owners are in choppy waters. Let's put it that way, right? And so the challenges may be amplified, but the opportunities are amplified. And anytime that there is a great dislocation in markets that are happening, there are lots of opportunities to grow value rapidly and harvest value. And so Kelly, from that perspective, I'm wondering if maybe we can talk a little bit about being prepared. Because one of our philosophies at Exitology and really throughout the entire Exit Planning Institute that we're members of is if you're prepared to sell, then you have a chance to extract all of the value of your life's work, which typically for a business owner who's listening to this is going to represent 80 or 90% of their entire wealth opportunity. And so I think it would be very helpful if we could maybe walk people through, as you're looking at being prepared to sell, even if you never actually do, what would it look like to be prepared to navigate a tricky recession environment? What would it look like to really be prepared to have your business ready to sell in case somebody comes around and gives you an offer you can't refuse?
Sure. Well, so let's talk about some standards, right? So
Okay.
you kind of have to decide which side of the fence you're going to sit on as a business owner. So if you think that you are the business is going well, not going well, but for some reason you think that you may not want to be in this business for 5 to 7 years, now is the time to make that decision to exit. Not because just the choppy waters that are coming, but because the value that you have for the business, because everything is going to be declining in values.
Sure.
That means that people in bankruptcy that maybe in your industry are going to sell really cheap, and that's going to impact the value of your business because of the sales in your industry.
That's a really good point, and I don't think a lot of people think about that. When we were talking with Stuart Sorkin recently on one of these episodes, he made a point that you're going to exit at some point, whether you want to or not. And I thought that was sort of a it was very to the point, but he's right. You're either going to die, let's just get to the worst one, right? Or you're going to have some disruption in your life. You're going to have disagreement with someone, whether it's vendors, business, whoever. You might get divorced, right?
Yep.
You might have a disability, and there's all these personal things that can happen. But what you just talked about is really interesting, and that is marketplace deflation.
Yeah, exactly.
So tell us about the dynamic that you see arriving where businesses, it sounds like, are not going to be prepared to exit, which is going to drive down the comparable value of other businesses like yours. So your 80% of your wealth might be worth a lot less than it could have been.
Same thing with investing in the stock market, right? If you're investing in the stock market today, we know that the stock market is in a bubble. No one is talking about that, but the stock market's in a bubble. So if you're invested in the stock market and you expect to get the same return in a year from now, you're going to lose more than 50% of what it is that you've got going on, because it's really got to reset and come back down to everything's inflated. It's got
Mm-hmm.
to come back to normal levels. What are those normal levels? I am hearing people predict that there could be a 30 to 40% decline in the market. And
Wow.
that is before we ever talk about anything related to governmental laws and regulations that are about ready to change. That has nothing to do with the economic headwinds that are coming from, like, let's just say that you have a loan. You're one of those people that has a loan on your business that you did in 2018 or 2019, and you're at
Mm-hmm.
2%, and you now have to refinance that.
Right.
Well, if you're not in a position to refinance that and you can't find a lender to lend you some cheap money to keep you going,
Mm-hmm.
there are some strategies you need to be putting in place, right? Let's look at it like a hurricane, because we just had the big hurricane
Okay.
in Cape Coral, right?
Yep.
They knew ahead of time that it was coming, and a lot of people prepared, a lot of people left, but a lot of people because they didn't take action got stuck. And when they got
Oh.
stuck, they became homeless. They lost everything. They got wrapped up in a flood. And thank goodness they made it out alive, because there was a lot of people that didn't even make it out alive. So this economic storm is no different than a hurricane coming.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to take the steps to batten down the hatches, put in
Yeah.
your sandbags so the
Right.
flood doesn't come your way.
Well, I really like that analogy because, the thing about hurricanes that I find to be very interesting, as you know, I live at 8,400 feet walking amongst the deer and the elk in the middle of the woods of Evergreen, Colorado. So in Evergreen, if you're going to get taken out, it's going to be a dry windstorm that turns into a fire. And then it's going to happen so fast. And that's right. That's the
You won't have time
real.
to prepare. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And well, there's preparations you can do, but at the end of the day, if it really, really wants to come for you, it's going to get you. And I contrast that with the hurricane because, first of all, a hurricane is huge. It's so much bigger than a forest fire. Even the biggest forest fires are in most cases super small compared to your average Joe hurricane. But not only that, a hurricane's so interesting because you do have time to go, a hurricane is forming. Not only has the hurricane formed, it's getting stronger. Oh, it's getting stronger and it's coming for me.
Yeah.
I should probably do something.
Yeah.
And so if we're using that analogy of the hurricane that is happening and coming towards us with regards to the economy, I notice, there's a lot of things I like about your book, but one of the things that I really like about it is the appendix areas, because you share with people a due diligence checklist. You share with people an actual letter of intent. Compared to a lot of these books, there's real resources in there where somebody could take the book and literally put it on a Xerox machine and start the process,
Yeah.
and so. I love that, and I love how tactical it is. But there's also there's a couple things that I want you to kind of maybe walk people through, because you really hammer home three aspects, right? One is have your financials in order. Number two is have your operations in order, and then number three is think about who your target buyer is.
That's right.
And I I got to be honest with you, even with as many very smart exit planners that I work with and so many smart business owners and stuff like that, one of those three legs of the stool is always super weak when we work with people. And
Yeah.
so it's clearly an easier said than done thing. But maybe you can walk us through like what does getting your financials in order look like? What does getting your operations in order look like? And then if we can get to the marketing part, we'll get there. And if not, we'll talk about it in a minute. So what does that look like?
So to talk about, we just talked about the financials the first, because financials is the very first thing. That's your introduction. It's your
Okay.
forward facing to your potential buyer.
Yep.
And if your financials aren't in order, meaning you have some kind of plan, it's not just about, well, I filed my taxes last year.
Right.
It's really about where are you at? Where are you headed?
Mm-hmm.
Now, they're going to come in with their own idea of where they're headed.
Mm-hmm.
But would you sell your house without cleaning,
No.
without doing the landscaping? You're going to take you're going to do what it takes to make that home that you're going to sell in the
Mm-hmm.
best possible position that it can be in. So finances are number one. Got to have all the
Yep.
financials. The balance sheet has to be current. P&L needs to be up to
Mm-hmm.
date. If you have a cash flow statement, even better. I can't
Yep.
tell you how many companies don't have cash flow statements.
Yep.
They have no idea where their cash flow sits.
And I think for the listeners, it's important to understand why all of this is important, is because so from one of the lenses that a buyer is going to look at you through is what are the last 3 years of numbers telling me?
Mhm.
And I know that when we take people through an value acceleration process at Exitology, we will actually go through, take your last 3 years of your balance sheet, take your last 3 years of your cash flow statement, take your P&L, take all of these things, and then we will extract them, and then we'll actually recast it to tell the story that we think is actually happening with the company.
Yeah.
And and the reason we do that is because very often a business owner will have built the company in a certain way to be tax optimized, which is very different than transferably optimized.
Yeah.
And so we actually we're not we're actually, when we're working with potential buyers, we're showing them both sets of numbers for perspective's sake and clarity's sake. Um, and it but more importantly, it draws a real value out of that, and it draws real clarity about what to do. And so I'd be curious, what in contrast with what we're doing, how does that kind of fit into what you're doing in terms of getting the financials in order?
Oh yeah, it's 100% the same.
Cool.
Some of the businesses that I work with,
Hmm.
or that I have seen. I mean, I worked with a hotel, and they still kept their books in an old handwritten ledger,
Mm,
and they would take that ledger
yep.
and their bank statements and turn it over to their accountant to have their
Wow.
accountant do. Well, so you kind of, I can't have a feel for your business. I have no
Right.
idea. I've got to go through. So I literally went through all of
Yep.
that documentation to create some financials so that we could actually position them to be able to
Awesome.
sell their hotel.
Let's take a pause here real quick. And folks, if you like what you're hearing right now, you can go to exitology.com, click on the Contact Us page, and send us a question. We answer the questions live every Friday when we do our show, and if you have a question for Kelly, we'll pass it on. We'll answer it on a future show. But we're gonna take a 2 minute break, and we'll be right with you again here on the Exitology Unlock Your Profits, Unlock Your Profit show on the International Business Growth Radio